War and art seem to be worlds apart, yet they both contain the power to sway nations and define generations. In reality, they exist in the same realm. War contains violence, but so does art. War involves politics, but so does art. And art contains emotion, but so does war. And both can be utilized for societal change using either destruction or creation. Sadly, Hitler knew all too well the power contained within both. So he waged his war, and he attempted to purge the world of all art that could hinder his plans, while also taking some of the greatest works of mankind for himself, making him one of the greatest thieves and one of the most politically powerful men of all time. And at the end of the war, some masterpieces were salvaged, while others were not so lucky. One great loss was that of the 3 ceiling tile paintings, Philosophy, Medicine, and Jurisprudence by Gustav Klimt. In 1943, after being in their final exhibition, Klimt's tiles were moved to Schloss Immendorf, a castle in Lower Austria, for their protection from approaching Allied forces. And in May 1945, the paintings were destroyed, as retreating German SS forces set fire to the castle to prevent it from falling into enemy hands, such as the Monuments Men or the Russian trophy brigades. All that we have left of the paintings are just a few sketches and photographs, including one complete photo of Medicine taken just before it was burned. The Nazi destruction of the compositions is a tragedy to the world because these tiles mark the point in Klimt's career when he went through a personal crisis and revelation which reformed his art style to reject conventions in order to reveal the underbelly and soul of humanity. Klimt took what he saw as the landscapes of the mind in relation to reality and society and used that for his inspiration for the paintings. Because Klimt's art imitates life as seen through his eyes, it grants us, as viewers, access to a world larger than our own. Klimt showed the core of the world and the sufferings of humanity with his work, giving us insight to a time that we cannot travel back to except through documents and incredible works of art such as his ceiling tiles. The years before the World Wars were quite different, especially in the city of Vienna. Before the turn of the century, the city that housed the upcoming modern artists like Klimt was going through some societal changes. The city had built up a wide, imposing avenue called Ringstrasse, with grand buildings erected all down the sides of the avenue. This construction brought with it a new era, aptly named the Ringstrasse era. This era brought about a liberal period which combined an exploration of individuals and society with an industrial expansion that allowed the city to become a flourishing scientific and cultural center. As part of a larger Ringstrasse project, in 1888, Klimt was commissioned alongside his younger brother Ernst and their friend Franz Mach to decorate the grand staircase of the Berg Theater. Their efforts were applauded and led to them being commissioned to decorate the great lobby of the Museum of Art History in 1891. As part of the 3-man art company, Klimt's style was very historical and traditional. Truthfully, at this time, Klimt was everything that the New Liberals stood for, because he rose from the lower ranks of society up into prosperity because of his conventional work, along with the patronage of the new heads of the society. Naturally, all of this led to him being commissioned to adorn the University of Vienna's ceiling with 3 paintings for the Triumph of Light series, meant to represent the university's faculties. While Klimt was commissioned to paint the 3 tiles representing the ideas of philosophy, medicine, and jurisprudence, his old friend Mach was commissioned to paint the idea of theology, as well as the central tile. Even though Klimt had received advance payments from the Minister of Education, Baron Wilhelm von Hartl, details of the paintings were not available until years later because during the time of Klimt's initial commission, both his younger brother and his father died. It seems rather ironic that a man dealing with so much death would have to paint about the triumphs and advancements of medicine. In context, this explains why his paintings turned out the way that they did. In March 1900, a preliminary version of philosophy was shown to the Austrian government at the 7th Vienna Succession Exhibition, which attracted around 35,000 visitors. What they saw was not what they expected. This painting was not philosophers of the age talking and consulting like in the famous painting, The School of Athens. Instead, viewers were faced with a tower of naked figures, floating in what seems to be a sleepy, limitless void, and the only clear, conscious figure is the woman at the bottom, representing Wissen, or knowledge. Klimt himself described the painting by saying, on the left, a group of figures, the beginning of life, fruition, and decay. On the right, the globe is mystery. Emerging below, a figure of light, knowledge. The academics accused Klimt of presenting unclear ideas in unclear forms, an accusation that would eventually be applied to all 3 of his ceiling tiles. Yet the same painting won a gold medal at an exhibition in Paris, highlighting the varying power and sensation a piece of art can have in different places and for different people. Despite the reaction to philosophy, Klimt presented medicine at the 10th Vienna Succession exhibition that occurred in 1901. The scene in the painting is chaotic, with a column of naked and skeletal figures twisting together, presenting a vision of distress rather than a vision of salvation through the advancement of medicine. Beside the river of bodies is a naked woman that could represent life, because she presents a clear contrast to the dark image of death in the painting, who is centrally represented as a skeleton floating among humankind. The only link between the woman of life and this tumultuous river of bodies exists between her arm and the arm of a man from the river, stretching toward each other. Another interesting aspect of the painting is the object in front of the woman, which some say is a newborn baby, symbolizing the never-ending cycle of birth and death. However, the most prominent and dominating figure is that of Hygeia, the goddess of health and the daughter of the god of medicine. She has a snake around her arm, and she holds a bowl that some consider to be the cup of Lethe, or oblivion. She is supposed to be a healer, and yet she does not look like she is about to save anyone. She remains facing forward while mortal men and women suffer behind her. Medicine does not triumph over the darkness. Rather, Klimt leaves his audience with the notion that medicine is powerless, unable to end our hardships and suffering. Essentially, medicine made all who viewed it face their mortality, which most likely scared them and resulted in their rejection of the art and the artist. The people at the exhibition were expecting a painting that exalted and praised the pioneering work being done in the medical field in a classic traditional style. Instead, they saw an impressionistic work that displayed an ambiguous image of the unity of life and death, with the goddess of health turning her back on humankind. Jurisprudence was presented in November 1903 at the 18th Vienna Succession exhibition. The theme coincides with the themes of the previous two paintings. Like the others, it focuses on man's conflicted existence. The painting shows a condemned man surrounded by three women meant to be the Furies, who were the Greek spirits of justice and vengeance. The punishment that they deliver to the man is in the form of an octopus wrapping him in a deadly embrace. In the background of the painting are three more women, clearly representing truth, justice, and the law. Law is the woman on the far right because she holds in her hands a document with the word lex, meaning law. Justice stands in the middle with her mighty sword, and truth stands to the far left. After seeing all three compositions, there were accusations that the project was above his intellectual level, and that the paintings were pornographic and obscene. For those reasons, they did not belong in the university. Around 87 faculty members at the university protested the tiles. A public prosecutor was even called in, but he didn't proceed to any action. However, the painting was so sensational that the issue actually did reach Parliament, making it the first time a cultural debate ever reached there. The only one who defended Klimt's work was the education minister. So, the education advisory for the university ultimately decided that the compositions should never decorate the ceiling, but instead, they should hang in the new State Gallery of Modern Art. After this controversy, in 1904 the paintings were requested for an international exhibition in St. Louis, called the Louisiana Purchase Exhibition. But the ministry declined because they feared the reaction of a foreign public to the unconventional compositions. Klimt resigned his commission, deciding that he wanted to keep his work since it would never adorn the ceiling of the university. However, the ministry insisted that they were already property of the state, and only when Klimt threatened the staff with a shotgun was he able to keep his paintings. He also paid off his commission advance with the help of a patron, August Lederer, who received philosophy as a gift. In 1911, the other two paintings were purchased by a friend of Klimt's, a fellow artist named Koloman Moser. Sadly, as we already know, that is not the end of the story for the paintings. When both Klimt and Koloman Moser died during the influenza pandemic in 1918, medicine was bought by the Österreichische Gallery in Vienna, while jurisprudence made it into the hands of the Lederer family. Because the Lederers were of Jewish ancestry, their entire collection was stolen by the Nazis and appropriated, or Arianized, in 1938. The question is, after being confiscated, why didn't the masterpieces of Klimt burn with all the other modern art that got labeled as degenerate? Instead, the three compositions were placed in the Österreichische Gallery. Possibly, the Nazis protected the works because the allegorical images in philosophy, medicine, and jurisprudence draw on the ideas from German philosophers and German philosophical tradition, allowing the Nazis to twist the meaning to fit their aesthetic and ideology. Another idea is that once stripped of their provenance, these works simply became generic icons of taste and wealth, which kept the works away from the degenerate art show. Either way, out of the frying pan into the fire, these pieces from Klimt, which came from a time when modern art was beginning to make its mark in Austria, escaped the degenerate bonfires, but they did not escape being thrown into the flames for the sake of Nazi pride and politics, almost successfully robbing the world of Klimt's perspective on the common themes of humanity in relation to truth, knowledge, and mortality.